Eerieville, Wondrous Destiny, Chapter 11.
After a full day of walking, they rested beside the Wrath River. Napoleon and Layla caught some fish. They made a bonfire, told jokes and stories, ate and slept. The next 2 days, they continued to walk east at a calm pace. The trees were becoming larger as they traveled, and before they noticed, they were already walking deep into the woods. They had entered the Stardust Forest. They rested near a small lake there. Once again, Napoleon and Layla caught some fish and made a bonfire. They all ate and slept for the night. After a few hours, the bonfire burned out. Without fire, they were in danger, exposed. A lone wolf slowly approached meticulously. Its paws stepped gently and slowly on the ground to avoid being heard. Its breath could be seen coming out of its mouth because of the cold. Its eyes were set on the triad sleeping in front of him. He was exhausted and his stomach hurt due to his hunger. Since he was a lone wolf, hunting was much more difficult for him. He stopped and examined all three at a distance. Layla seemed to be his first lunch preference, but she was on the other side of Napoleon. But he had to make a choice. Fast, it chose Napoleon. He was closer. He was too hungry and couldn't afford to risk losing his prey. He walked slowly towards them. As he got closer, he stepped on a branch that snapped. Only Napoleon heard it and woke up. The wolf saw this and began to sprint towards them. Napoleon saw him dashing towards him. "Ah, a wolf!" he yelled. That woke Layla and Crimson up. Before they knew it, the wolf had his jaws and claws on Napoleon. The wolf began to run away with its prey, Napoleon, in his mouth, but Crimson dashed towards them and was able to grab the wolf's ankle and stop him. "My husband." Layla soon caught up to them. "Leave my husband alone, you dirty rat." She hit the wolf on its head with her hands. The wolf looked at Layla, astounded, growled, and crouched his face. Crimson was now able to grab full hold of the wolf and wrestled with it. The wolf scratched Crimson's face and arms with its paws, leaving some scratches on him. "Get my sword," Crimson yelled. Layla was too busy hitting the wolf and trying to rescue her beloved husband, and she didn't even hear Crimson. "Layla, my sword," Crimson yelled. No response from her. "Layla, listen, I will save Napoleon, but you've got to give me my sword." "No." Layla finally heard him. She saw Crimson, whose face was bleeding from the scratches. Her eyes widened, then she began to look around. "Where is it?" "It's over there," Crimson said, signaling with his head. "Next to those rocks." "I see it," Layla said. "I will save my husband." She ran towards Crimson's sword and grabbed it. With it now in her hand, she sprinted back. "Good, Layla. Now give it to me," Crimson commanded. Layla sprinted past Crimson with his sword, ignoring his request. "Leave my husband alone, you dirty rat." She reached the wolf and raised her arms with the sword, ready to attack. "Layla," Crimson yelled in disbelief at what he was seeing. The wolf's eyes widened as he saw Layla with the sword. He immediately let go of Napoleon, his prey-to-be, and bit Crimson's hand, which was still grabbing his ankle. "Ah!" Crimson cried and let go of him. The wolf began to sprint. It was too late. Layla's arms were already set in motion for the attack, slashing the sword toward the wolf's back. The wolf was already in motion. She missed his back, but hit the wolf on the left thigh, slicing its skin open. The wolf cried, but still managed to run away. The sword, still in Layla's hands, was left stained with wolf's blood, its sharp point now resting on the ground. "My dear, are you okay?" Layla asked Mr. Napoleon. "You were supposed to take care of me. What happened?" Napoleon was dizzy and disoriented. He had scratches and blood all over, and a deep wound in his stomach from the wolf's fangs, which was bleeding heavily. "Quick, we've got to cover the wound to stop the bleeding," Crimson said as he reached toward one of the bags. He ripped a piece of cloth. "Hold him," he instructed Layla. She did. He cleaned the wound with water from the lake and began to wrap the piece of cloth around his pierced stomach. The cloth, which was blue, slowly turned dark red. It even dripped a little bit of blood. Crimson held down the cloth by applying pressure on the wound. After about a minute, the bleeding stopped. "You will be okay, Mr. Napoleon." "Will I?" Napoleon replied with a soft, faint voice. He looked at Crimson, and his eyes slowly began to close. He passed out. "My husband," Layla cried. "My husband is dead," she said with a sobbing, breaking voice. Then she cried. "Calm down, Mrs. Layla," said Crimson. "He is not dead. He just fainted. We've got to get him some medical help and fast." "Yes, let's go," she replied. "We must find the Stardust Fairy Guardian Mr. Napoleon was talking about. She should have access to medical aid." Layla was picking up her fainted husband in her arms to carry him. "Let's hurry, Crimson," she said with a still semi-sobbing voice. "No worries, Mrs. Layla, I'll carry Mr. Napoleon. He is not that heavy for me." "He's my husband. I must take care of him," she replied. "I'll be cautious with him. Please, let me carry him." Layla was reluctant to let go of her husband. "I promise I will," said Crimson, now gently grabbing Napoleon from Layla's arms. "Please." Layla finally nodded and let Crimson hold him. "I don't know where the Stardust Fairy Guardian might be. Let's just walk deeper into the woods. We'll try and figure it out," Crimson said with an honest and affirmative tone. "We better," Layla said. They began walking deeper into the woods.